Hello and welcome to the Holographic Podcast. I'm your host, Tony D, and I'm joined by my co-host, the man, Kyle, the salty dog. How are you, Kyle?
I am good, Tony. Summer's flying by. It's been very busy. I'll keep it brief. Summer's flying by. It's been very busy.
Summer is flying by. It's been a while since our last show. We do this show for fun. We do it to promote positivity and to talk about cool things and to get our voices out there. But it's not easy because it's a tough life these days. Me personally, my family's doing good, but some of you may know I did a show on it about the United States Postal Service. I work as a mail carrier, and it's just been insane. We're really short-staffed. They can't hire anybody. The organization is failing. Just to follow up on that show, I predict that there will be an end to reliable mail service in 2 years. It's that's bad.
Terrible news.
It's terrible news. It's that bad. It's management is just dropping the ball. It's horrible. So I've been working a lot, 6 days a week, and we have no cover. We have no subs. We have no help, and it's insane. And I like my job, but the organization is crumbling. So it is what it is, like a lot of organizations.
You're not alone, man. You can't get good help to do anything these days.
That's right.
It's really, really hard. I'm in the restaurant business, and we can't hire anybody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a systemic problem, and it's as society changes, and we'll actually talk about that in a little bit. It's relating to our topic. Well, we're going to talk about how society is right now, and maybe possibly handing it over to artificial intelligence, AI, or just a computer or whatever, something like that.
Hey. I. For the future.
Nice. That's exactly right. Just briefly too, I just want to talk about the holographic universe here, where this is the Holographic Podcast, and there's actually been a couple scientific breakthroughs, one of which scientists they're obscure, but one of which scientists are now claiming that there is no reality, because they're like, well, we're doing these experiments and things only happen when we view them, and there's actually nothingness. And then this other experiment with the way that in the quantum realm, where two quantum in quantum mechanics, there can be two things, and they do the exact same thing, but they're very far apart. And so thanks, Kyle. And they do these two things, but they're very far apart, so they go faster than the speed of light. All this just proves that the holographic theory of reality is correct. All of this just proves that we are in a simulation, that our brains just make everything up, that we're just made up of light and energy. So enjoy life. You're just light and energy. It is what it is. We live in a holographic universe.
We're here for a good time, not a long time.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So we're here for a good time, not a long time, but lately times have not been so good for a lot of people, because to put it bluntly, shit's hitting the fan. We have war, which is continued. We have climate change, which is really getting it's changing exponentially. It's getting worse than they predicted even.
And it's also on the back burner because of everything that else is going on.
Right.
No one really cares anymore.
Right. We have this climate crisis, and no one really cares because there's so much other shit going on.
I stopped caring. I did.
I believe you. I completely believe you. It's hard. It's a climate change is this thing that's definitely happening, and you can see it, but because it's so slow, and because it's not an immediate threat to a lot of us, it's hard to really grasp and think about, but it's going on. We have we have oh, so I talked about war. We have all these supply and worker issues. We just talked about it. There's, conditions are supposed to improve and workers don't want improvements, but they're not being paid properly. It's relating to the inflation, otherwise known as greedflation, which corporate profits are at an all-time high, but prices are going up and up and up, and wages are not going that far up. And meanwhile, and then on top of all that, you have our leaders in the United States that are completely and utterly not just dropping the ball, but turning into a horrible theocracy. We have these Supreme Court decisions and these different changes around the country that are just turning us into the Handmaid's Tale, basically. I mean, it's no good.
We're going backwards.
We're going backwards. That's
Very
exactly right.
very
We're
much
going backwards.
Yeah.
Now, Kyle, we've done a show in the past about politics, and we've talked about how you can take different political opinions and kind of form them into new opinions and move forward. Now, do you think that's actually possible?
Yeah, I think it's possible, but it certainly isn't. It doesn't seem to be happening right now, and I'm still wondering why. Part of me keeps on saying that the younger generation is actually going to save us. I think we said this, and I don't mean save us. I mean, supposedly, from what I've read, from what I know, from what I know from experience, younger people, millennials, Gen Zs, they're more in tune with a lot of feelings that conservatives and right wingers are calling, woke culture, sensitivity to gender related issues, to personal choice issues. And that paints a positive picture for me, because perhaps sometime in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, those people will actually be making the decisions. And instead of going backwards, we'll be moving back towards a more equitable and fair society, with decision making really falling on choices that, instead of limiting your social and economic well-being, they will be maximizing it. However, if you had asked me 10 years ago if I thought my generation, or the next one down from us, would have already done that, I would have said yes then too. And we definitely haven't. So I mean, while I am optimistic, I'm still I'm keeping a part of my brain just tuned in for the fragmentation of society. And I mean, I've got some sort of things prepared for it, but honestly, we're all really pretty screwed, because unless you're a homesteader, you're gonna die.
Well, we're all gonna die eventually.
Sooner, you're gonna die sooner.
And become part of the light and energy of the universe. So, don't worry about that. But, that's a good point that you said, that, you feel like as more generations come up, they're more in tune with advancements in thought and being
feeling,
in thought and feeling, and making it better for everybody else. And it seems like, but I would argue that that's been happening for a long time, that as the next generation comes up, that, they are more in tune with thought and feeling. But now my hypothesis of late is, and the reason I want to talk about artificial intelligence, is because as each generation gets older and becomes more powerful and becomes richer, no matter where they came from an empathetic viewpoint, or no matter what they thought at one point, when some of them come in power, or let me rephrase that, when a few people become powerful, and when a few people start leading the country, because not everybody's empowered, there's just a few people in power. That power then corrupts them and changes them. And so when I was younger, I thought that there's a chance that you could get power and then change things for the better, because you would maintain that empathy and you would still have that connection to feelings, right? But as I get older, I've been realizing that everyone who comes to power seems to lose the empathy and lose the connection with the society, and just want to keep their money in power. And I think that human nature is almost, it's like, I don't know if when you've been in management positions, Kyle, when you've led people, don't you feel like it makes you feel a certain way? You have this feeling, and that's just a little bit. Like when we're in a small management position, you can feel like the power that you get, and you try not to take advantage of people, but you're like, hey, you know what? I have the management position right now, and I need to do what's right. And that's just the way it goes. And that's how you have to manage. Now imagine people, they get in these really high positions of power, and the crazy feelings that they get, and their mindset that they get. And it just seems to me that this is what happens with humanity, is we have people that become in power, and no matter where they came from, no matter how empathetic we thought they were, no matter how great we thought they were, that changes. Would you
Yeah,
agree with that?
yeah, definitely. And I do agree with that. And history would I think prove you right. I mean, I don't have a really encyclopedic, categorical knowledge of history, but looking back to our parents' generation, and I'm not shitting on my parents. They're good people and they've lived a good life. And the best they could do is provide for me when I was younger and my sister, and give us the best that food on the table, all the basic stuff. But going back to before they were even parents, they were part of the hippie generation, and, they were big into environmental movements. To be honest, man,
That's
fuck
out the window.
well, here's the thing: society just grinds you down after several decades.
I agree.
It's like if you're constantly swimming against the current and you're fighting the good fight, even though it's the good fight, but somehow human mechanizations have just pulled you along. You can only swim so long against the current until finally you say, well, I'm safe. I just want to live, man. There's a few exceptions, people that really have stuck to what they've done, their deep, deep values. But it takes a very sacrificial person to do that. And the older you get, the colder you get, the hotter you get, in terms of like needing a comfort envelope, what you're able to do for long periods of time. Like you just can't suffer as much, with each given year. It's not even that hot. And I hooked up my air conditioner today because fuck it, man. I'm like, I'm going to try it out. And I'm burning up electricity. I mean, I'm still fairly low carbon footprint comparatively, and I do other things. But yeah, like you said, it's not just the power. It is a lot of times. You're 100% right on that. But it's also, in addition to that, after a while, you just start to lose sight of those deep values you had, because everybody's just smushing it out of you for all these years.
That's true. So there is a statistic that said that the leaders in the United States, something like 90 something % of them are over 70, not just over 60, but over 70.
That is a problem. That is definitely a problem.
That's a problem. And so, but even if you're over 50, I mean, the rest of them, are, how many are young? There's just not a lot of, and I'm sure that there's a lot of good leaders who are young, and I'm sure that they could do a good job, but it's just not how our system works. You just can't get into power until you're older. That's just the way it's going. And so by the time they're that age, they're worn down. Like you said, they're worn down. They've lost so much of their fire to help others, their empathy, all that stuff. So hence our leaders have failed us. They're They're
Well,
not looking for the best interests. What's that?
that lifetime appointment shit with the Supreme Court
Oh,
is, I
ridiculous.
don't know who came up with that. Well, what a bunch of nonsense
Oh,
that is.
absolutely. Or even term limits in Congress.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems logical. That's the part I really can't understand about all of the things that all these ideas that come across but never really go anywhere. To me, they make a lot of sense. It doesn't, there's not one bit of either one of those basic changes that says to me, well, you might want to be careful because it would backfire, because no, it could not backfire that I can think of. There's no reason why they should have lifetime appointments, and there's no reason why there shouldn't be term limits on both of those things. You know,
I
it's
I agree
crazy.
with you. I completely agree with you with everything you just said, but I think that our system and the people in charge right now are incapable of making those changes. I think that they're just not, the system is so corrupt and the system is so dysfunctional that we don't have the capability to do the right thing in that capacity. So my idea is hand it over to the AI, baby, hand it over to a computer. So and I say computer because, people think AI and they think sentient, right? And there's actually been something in the news where they thought that a program could have been sentient. There's a whistleblower who said, have you heard of this? The guy who,
What's sentient?
a sentient, like an actual alive conscious AI.
Oh, ascension.
Sentient, like
Oh, sentient.
sentient. Oh, sorry. Oh, we're doing English. It was a sentient AI.
I had never heard of sentient. I have heard of a sentient being.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Uh,
Sentient.
it
For
just
all
like
you listeners out there, Tony meant to say sentient.
sentient. Lovely. So, an AI that is actually alive and is evolving and changing and doing all that kind of stuff. There was a chat bot that a gentleman claimed had reached sentience, and but it's designed to talk to you. So I don't know if he was just fooled by it or what, but in any case, it's close. It's very close that these particular programs could be alive. But even if they're not, the way that computers and programs can work is that they can, the supercomputers, and also as quantum computing becomes more popular and quantum computing progresses, they can go through and do a million calculations and a billion ways of looking at the future. So they would say, okay, what's the right way to do a Supreme Court? Is it have lifetime appointments? And then they go through a million different scenarios, and they go, wait. And all these scenarios, that this Supreme Court is garbage. And the scenarios that they don't have lifetime appointments, and the scenarios that there are more Supreme Court justices, it's more equitable and it's more fair. So my point is that a computer would look at it without emotion, go through all these scenarios and figure out that that's the right way to do it, or something that is better for society, because that computer was programmed to look at the betterment of society and not just a further of a political party, or a certain political aim, or money being put into, all that kind of thing. So in my opinion, it's scary, but I think it's the right thing to do, is to get the computers in charge. That's just one example, is that. But climate change and greedflation and all that kind of stuff can be tackled so quickly by a computer. It's just that it needs to be put in charge, but also there's consequences. Does that scare you, Kyle? Does that make you, are you hesitant about that?
Yeah, I mean, I am, but I can't disagree with you 100%, mostly because of the current situation we're in, and looking at the historical record and watching as we constantly, repeat the mistakes of the past, or even my decent, fair arguments on the book of the face, the ones where everybody's playing nice and there's some real good political debates. They don't really ever get anywhere in because everybody's making valid points, but it's like a tug of war with two even teams.
Yep.
And there's not, well, I mean, I'm right, obviously.
Not even.
I think that progressivism and liberalism, like being open-minded, will ultimately triumph over being conservative and closed-minded. But I digress. I do look at it with a skeptical point of view. I am not unwilling to see it applied in many situations, and I can't say that that's a bad idea given the decisions that we've been made. However, I would caution you. I need only to go back to 1986 and quote one of my favorite movies, War Games. Where they decided to put the missile silos in control of the Whopper computer, Whopper, WOPR, War Operations Plan Response. And the general at the meeting, laughs at everybody, says, "Gentlemen, we've been having men down in them silos since before any of you were watching Howdy Doody. I don't know about you, but I feel pretty good having those boys down there. And I don't trust the future of our country to some silicone diode." And he's friggin' right, man, because the movie clearly shows that nuclear war was averted not by a machine, but by people. So
yeah, you're right.
think that there's definitely there. I'm kind of joking with that, and honestly, at this late stage in the game, not late stage, where we are now, I'm actually more. I know this isn't good for the show because you want point counterpoint, but I'm actually more liable to agree with you that we should try it out, and that, I mean, maybe not across the board, but why not give it a whirl or run some simulations or do it in some smaller applications, do it in some smaller bits of government. Or the problem you're going to run into, and I know we want to go back and forth, we will, you're going to have trouble implementing it, because again, you're just going to have all these people saying AI, AI, AI. No. How are you going to actually fairly and equitably get it in there? I think
that's true.
We need, this is where secret governmental operations can be good. Time for the CIA to do some, AI right. implementation.
So I mean, you actually brought up, and you know what, I've talked to a few different people about this topic, and a lot of people who I thought were not into it are kind of into it because things are so kind of messed up right now. They're like, oh, why don't we give it a shot? So, but you brought up a couple good points, about the main thing I think people think of with computers is like, oh, well, it's going to be a Terminator, it's going to be a, the Whopper is going to start the nuclear war and all this kind of stuff. And I think that has to do with programming. So in this particular case, this is about the betterment of society. So we wouldn't give it the power to make war. It's just an easy fix. Like, you don't program it to have control over nuclear weapons. You don't program it to start any sort of physical confrontational thing. It's purely a think tank that can lead to changes in society. But then the second issue is just what you said, implementing it. So how do you implement it? That I haven't figured out. I have no idea, because I think
you start small. I think you have to come up with, I actually don't think it's that hard. I think what you'd have to do is you'd have to come up with some applications and some examples where you say, well, this could really benefit us and it won't hurt anybody, and this is a trial. So,
right.
Where can we try this out where people are not threatened? Where can we see, how this might work and not have anybody sort of like have anything taken away from them, or, things of that nature. You just have to sort of start small.
Absolutely.
it actually surprises me that we haven't done that yet, you know? Did you read about that guy that started an AI bot on like
4chan.
4chan?
Yeah,
And it like and
it
but
was horrible.
it was all negative. Like he programmed it to, I don't know how he programmed it, but whether it was programmed specifically to react to negative and give back negative, or if it went that, I don't think it went that way on its own. But my takeaway was this guy made a basic AI program and it basically put out like like 100 times as much badness as like all the human negative trollers were
Right.
able to do in like a fraction of the time.
So
So
that's a good point. He fed it a bunch of negative troll crap, and that's what it produced. So in this case, if we want a betterment of society, we need to feed it, we need to program it to
with
be
good stuff.
with good stuff. And so who decides that and how it's programmed? I mean, that's an issue. These are all major issues. And
Yeah, don't be programming that thing with no fucking abortion laws, man. You
that's
think you're good, but you're bad.
that's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about.
I
So
don't want no bot. If you program a bot that's pro life, I'm all about that.
so yeah, so I mean, these are the issues. Now, there's another big issue that I've been thinking about that I think we need to discuss is that if we do something like this is going to it's going to take away some of our freedoms, because it's going to say, hey, if you want good healthcare, and if you want a good society, and if you want something to eat, and if you want a roof over your head, and if you want everyone to be equitable, you're not going to be able to do a lot of stuff. You're not going to be able to drive giant trucks everywhere. You're not going to be able to go shooting guns everywhere. You're not going
to come up with those things like that.
Exactly.
We already know those things.
Well, but then you're going to get a lot of people who are like, well, I want my trucks and guns.
For sure.
So we're going to have to figure out a way for people to understand that but obviously they don't understand. We're in the position where we're in because people are not willing to do that. They're not willing. So get the CIA involved in
If you think of a small app, have you in your musings, can you think of a small application that would serve as sort of an exemplar of how this may work, or perhaps a scenario where it might change the hearts and minds of people in a small way?
I haven't given a lot just off the top of my head. I mean, I think that in a small, I think you can have like trials in small urban settings. You can have trials in like a business setting, like a business campus, a small urban setting. But
I kind of feel like maybe like what might be interesting would be for something like MIT, for example, to come
right,
up with like a satellite campus or program with real students, all like a small satellite, a mirror of any one of its multiple organizations or campuses, or however it works. Get it developed, write the software, write the code, write the AI program, and hand it off.
right.
Give it over to some people that are dedicated to the project, some people that are thinking like you, that have the capability to create and implement this and test it on themselves, and see where we are in, I don't know how long that takes. I'm going to say a minute. It's going to take 10 years to do that whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. This is in the future. There's no way we're going to be able to implement this quick, and hopefully we last that long.
Yeah.
Hey, one. So I think it's something that we can definitely think about, and there's a lot of discussion going on. I'm not the only one who's talking about this, but it's something that everybody has to kind of open up to, and I think people are opening up to it. And it's a really interesting thing, and I want to talk about it more, but I don't want the show to be super long, because the show's been long, and other shows are long, and we're just gonna wrap it up.
Let's do shorter shows more frequently.
We're gonna do shorter shows more frequently. So We're gonna do an 80s quote, 80s movies quote. And we're gonna go with the Terminator because everybody knows that the Terminator is like a cautionary tale about AI, right? So you remember in the Terminator when the guy drops out of the thing and the homeless guy's there and he goes, "Hey, bud, did you just see a real bright light?"
I don't remember that, but okay.
That's not the quote. The quote is in Terminator 2, which is actually in the 90s, but I had to put an 80s quote in there. So in Terminator 2, I tricked you. In the 90s,
Well, I already had an 80s quote. So
that's true. You already did. So we got two 80s quotes. You got War Games in there too. Okay. Terminator 2. In the they get Sarah Connor from the crazy house, and then the Terminator's protecting John, and Sarah Connor looks at the Terminator who's protecting her son, and she says this, I wrote it down. She says, "Watching John with the machine, it was suddenly so clear. The Terminator would never stop. It would never leave him. It would never hunt him. It would never shout at him or get drunk and hit him or say it was too busy to spend time with him. It would always be there, and it would die to protect him. Of all the would-be fathers who came and went over the years, this thing, this machine, was the only one who measured up. In an insane world, it was the sane choice." Sarah Connor, baby. So in this movie that is like a cautionary tale against AI, the lady who hates Terminators figures out that it's the only way to protect her son is just a reprogrammed Terminator. And that's how I feel right now, that it's like society is crumbling. And even though it's scary, if we just program them correctly and put them in charge, I feel like AI could do a pretty decent job.
I'd be eager to find out myself.
We're eager to find out. We're gonna do it. That was it, folks. Think about it. Thank you for joining us. Kyle, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Good to see you, man.
This is the Holographic Podcast, signing off.